I'm here with my friend Kaela, and we are going to talk about how to unhook from your biggest triggers. So welcome, Kaela.
Hi, Tom. Thank you so much for having me here. I am excited to be talking about how to unhook from your biggest triggers. I think that this is something that can benefit all people all the time, but especially right now in the holiday season, this definitely becomes a time when we tend to get really triggered. And Tom, I would just love to know for you, do you find that, well, first, have you ever been triggered? You know what I mean? Like your buttons get pushed, your feathers, has that ever happened to you?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. So my other question is, when you notice that you were triggered or your buttons were pushed in any day, is that the day that you feel like you're doing your absolute best work? Or is it like, I'm not really feeling like myself, and so my energy is diluted?
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely say it's when I'm in a lower energy field that things tend to trigger me more or bother me more. Yes.
Yeah, for sure. And then we do not show up and do our best work. And the big important things that we have going on in our lives don't work the way that we want them to. And so this is one of the reasons that I'm so excited to be in so many different communities right now talking about this. And I know that many of the people that you're connected with are playing a really big game and up to big things. And so one of the first things that I want to speak into is the reason of why we would even spend a minute unhooking from triggers and looking at that. And what I think most of us like to do, I know it's what I did for many years, is we try to silo the big important things going on in our life and then the things that kind of miff us or push our buttons. And that doesn't work. So, like, Tom, I'm thinking about if you have, like, what's a really important thing that you might be doing in any given day for yourself?
For myself or for the business?
For either for the business or yourself.
Yeah. Well, one of the my biggest concerns is always the safety of my investors' capital, right?
Yeah.
So being able to really be very responsible with the capital that we are entrusted, that we help investors invest.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So we might, if someone pushes your buttons, and it can be anything, triggers come from our partners. So it could be a business partner. They come from people around us. So that's like your family, your assistant, someone in your apartment building, and they come from people everywhere. Like, we can also be triggered when we just show up online and someone says something that we don't agree with, or they cut us off on the highway. So let's imagine that any number of the things that trigger you happen in the morning, and then you show up to work and you're like, okay, it's time for me to be really responsible and protect my investors' capital. We want to try to silo it and say, like, okay, that trigger, I'm just going to deal with it later. I'm just going to move on. And now I'm going to focus on this. But that energy is still alive in us because our business is just an extension of ourselves. And so one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about helping people unhook from their triggers is because when we do that, we can bring our whole best selves into the work that we're doing. And for you, Tom, we can ensure that you really have your full self able to deliver on that for your clients.
Got it.
Okay.
Sounds very interesting.
So that's why we're talking about this today. So I want to give you my 3-step process for, it's like the 3 big things that we can do when we notice that we're being triggered. And I want to start by making a distinction between getting over a trigger and actually creating a breakthrough or transcending or lifting out of a trigger. So we like to think that I'm just going to get over it or I'm just going to forget about it. That doesn't actually work. That just pushes the trigger down. Whatever the root feelings were underneath the trigger, it has that energy still alive in us. And so as much as I can appreciate the positive optimism of I'm just going to forget about it and move on, it doesn't allow the energy to move through. What happens then is actually our emotions are possessing us instead of us processing the trigger. And so the first step that we want to take when we notice that we're being triggered is we simply want to own it. And so this step is clarity. And it looks as simple as, I'm being triggered right now. This is a trigger moment. which is different than, oh, that jerk cut me off on the highway, or this person did this, or that person said that to me. It's simply stepping into ownership of, I'm being triggered right now. Okay, I'm going to own that this is a moment where there's something inside of me that's feeling activated and triggered.
So what I'm hearing is awareness and acknowledgement of it.
Absolutely. That is the first step. And that, even that step can feel kind of tricky when for how many years we're used to thinking it's that person over there that did it to us.
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah. So then the second thing that we get to do is look at, okay, if that is the trigger that I'm having, what is the experience going on inside of me? And what choice do I want to make? So first we get the awareness, and then we get to look at the choice. So we have the clarity and then the choice. There's a couple different choices that we can make. One choice that we had talked about before that many of us make is, oh, whatever, I'm just going to get over it. Now, again, I can appreciate how we might think that that's helpful, but it doesn't actually move the emotion through. Another choice that maybe you've made, I know I've made this choice many a times, is to have a total blowout where we take the trigger and we just we just lose it. We cry or we scream or whatever happens. And now the trigger is really possessing us and it's taking the lead. And we know how that works out, never really in our favor. So the third choice that I want to introduce today is that we can actually create a breakthrough with the trigger. And the way that we do that is by looking within and seeing what's going on in me that this is so triggering to me. What is it about me that makes it feel so annoying?
Yeah.
So I'll give an example. This actually just happened to me earlier. This just happened today. Earlier today, I messed up a meeting. I messed up the time zones and I was late. And there's a previous time in my life where that would have set me into a tailspin. Like someone else or me missing a meeting, I would have been so triggered. I would have been beating myself up. Or if it was them, I would have been in total judgment. I would be thinking things like, how are they so irresponsible? How can't they get this together? And what I saw when I started to do this work and got into step 2 of choice is, okay, well, if I actually want to choose to lift out of this, then I get to look at what's going on inside me that has this be so aggravating for me. Mm. And what I found for myself is that I was holding myself to such a high standard that I felt like if I ever made a mistake or ever dropped the ball or ever was late for something, it was just evidence of how I'm not enough, how I'm not good enough, how I'm like all of the things. Mm-hmm. That's a wound that was alive inside of me. And it's why I was being triggered when that came up.
Interesting.
Yeah. So by actually being able to do that inner work, now when that choice comes up, like today I missed the meeting, I can be apologetic. I can clean it up. I'm not just like, oh, well, this thing's happened. Like I can clean it up, but I don't have to let it derail my day because I know how to make the choice to lift out of the trigger. And so and
there doesn't need to be blame put on yourself, an acknowledgement of it, and then a processing of it is what I'm hearing.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And then that brings us into the third step, which is to celebrate that we're actually creating a new pattern for ourselves because we are going to be triggered again. But when we can be in celebration of, I know how to create a new pattern, it's easier to go through this process again and again and again, making the choice to lift instead of having it take us out. And so it does matter that we acknowledge for ourselves, I chose differently this time.
Yeah. And think of all the weight I can imagine the weight that it takes off of one when you really get to that depth of understanding and being able to process it.
Yeah. So these are now we did a very high level tip of the iceberg overview, but this is the work that I'm up to right now. I'm on a mission to support people to live their very best lives and reach their goals, be it personally or professionally. And one of the things that I know is, like we said at the beginning, we cannot silo what's going on for ourselves in our outer world. And so I'm really excited to support people on transcending triggers, unhooking from their big triggers so that they can be their best selves in whatever arena of life they want to bring that to.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yes. So I do want to tell folks that if this sparks something for you and you're like, I do get triggered And either you're now seeing like, okay, what I try to do is just get over it. And I can now see that that's not really supporting me, or I go into blow up. I would love to invite you to join my friend Lisa and I for a 3-day masterclass that we have coming up in January. It's called Transcending Triggers. You have complimentary access when you register by January 10th. And you can register at riseleadershipcircle.com/transcending-triggers. We can put that in the caption once we are able to post. And what we're really going to be doing is a deep dive over those. It's 1 hour a day for 3 days on how to do this process. So today I gave you the big what it is, but we're going to dive into how to do the process.
Nice. Wow, that's very generous, and that sounds really interesting. And I'm going to sign up for it myself.
Awesome, Tom. It's so powerful, and I think just imagine what the world is like when we can really do the processing and healing on ourselves instead of projecting what's going on onto everyone else.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tom.
Thank you for sharing, Kaela. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. I'll see you at Transcending Triggers.
All right.